Hello, and welcome to another episode of Writing Escapades with me, David Rawding. Today I'm going to talk about writing what you know and how to do proper research. So stick with it, because this is going to be a good one. Hey guys, this background is actually in Bergen, Norway. Cool little fishing town. I highly suggest you get some fish soup from the market. Really good. Norway's beautiful and isolated and just pretty wonderful. So when you're watching a movie and that person turns to you and they say, "That's not how it's done in real life." Well, when someone's a subject matter expert and they watch something or they read something, they want to see it done right and at least very close to how it actually happens in real life. A lot of times a movie or a book falls short. When a writer or a director fails at this, it can cheapen the product. Likewise, when a writer or director knows about their content personally or does enough research that they're able to pull it off, a reader or someone watching a movie or a TV show, they will have a richer experience. People who like to read fiction are fine with dragons and sorcerers and magic creatures existing in books and on screen, but they usually want the rules of the new world to be given and followed. Here's an example. I was a fencer for over 5 years. Now, I'm not talking about the fences. I'm talking about the swords. I had my sword of choice was the epee, or foil, but some people like the saber. So I know what I'm talking about when it comes to fencing. So with this experience of fencing, when I watch a movie and I see actors and they're fencing or they're having a sword fight, I usually roll my eyes because they're literally just hitting each other's blades like a game of patty cake. Fencing is actually very fast, and the best fencers can stab an opponent in seconds. Now, this is less dramatic, and I get that on screen they want some swashbuckling. But for me, the closer to reality a story can get, the better. Now, there is one movie that I know that actually has real fencing in it. That movie is The Princess Bride. Amazing movie which came from a book. Books make good movies. Who would have thought? So whenever I watch that fencing scene in The Princess Bride, I always smile and nod, watching the lunges, the parries, the feints, the ripostes. Real on-screen fencing can be done, and when it's done well, it makes me revere the movie that much more. So you've heard the saying, write what you know. Pretty self-explanatory. If you know about business, try having some characters that are business people. If you're a lawyer, write a legal drama. If you're a doctor, write a medical drama. Now, of course, I am not saying you have to only write about things you know. Far from it. If you want to write about space elves that ride space whales and harvest plasma from a distant star, then go for it, champ. What would we call that story? I'm going to go with The Last Space Whale Rider of the Distant Stars. Okay, so my point, if I even have a point, is that you need to do your research. With The Last Space Whale Rider series, I would want to read other elvish stories out there. Maybe some books on elvish lore. I'd want to research space. I'd want to research stars. I'd want to research whales and everything I could to give this story the size and scope and to establish some rules. Are these elves wearing spacesuits when they ride these whales? How fast can a space whale move through space? What sort of harness would they be equipped with? How can their bodies survive the vacuum of space? How can they harvest plasma from the sun and not burn to a crisp? Is there a magic system or a technology system or both? See how I'm getting to all these questions? The reader is also wondering all these things. Okay, so the readers are going to have a lot of questions. So you're going to want to address them in your story. This brings me to the topic at hand, which is how do you do research for your story? While Google and YouTube can take you a long way nowadays, I have found that meeting and interviewing a primary source who works in the field can take your writing to another level. I did this in Taking on Water, where I interviewed a social worker and police. I did this in my second book, Redemption Grove, as well, and I interviewed a surgical nurse, a physical therapist, and people associated with addiction and recovery. As an author, one thing that always makes me smile is when a nurse or a police officer or a social worker leaves a review and says something to the effect of, "I'm a social worker," or "I'm a nurse, and the social work or nursing scenes were actually done well." They had them actually as if they expected it to not be done well. Or sometimes the reviewer will flat out say, "The author did his research." That's when I actually get to see that the research paid off. Okay, so I'm going to tell you how I would go about doing an interview and gathering research. So let's just say I'm writing a fiction novel and I have a main character who drives and operates a concrete truck. I've picked this job at random and I know almost nothing about this profession, which is why I would not even attempt to write about this job, being that I am totally ignorant of what this job entails. So if my main character is going to be a concrete truck driver and operator, I would want to learn as much as I could about the concrete trucks and this character's world. Driving and operating a concrete truck sounds like a fairly normal job, but I bet you there's a lot more to concrete trucks than you or I even know. Think about the physics of driving a vehicle that has to keep spinning the concrete as it drives down a highway or as it climbs a steep, muddy road to a job site. Think about how long that concrete can last before it starts to solidify. So what I would do is write a list of questions, and I would sit down, have a phone call or an email, or somehow connect with as many concrete truck drivers as you can. I would also seek out one in the part of the world where my book took place, because the life of a concrete truck driver and operator is probably vastly different. So take one that's working in the Colorado Rockies versus one that's working in like New York City streets. Completely different days. I find that meeting someone face to face is the best for any sort of interview. I can assess their body language, their tone as they give me their answers. Even their smell and demeanor are fair game. Maybe he or she has bits of dirt or concrete under their nails. Maybe their clothes are stained by the concrete. Maybe they walk with a limp because of an injury from work. I would drive around with a concrete truck driver for a day or even a week and ask them questions along the way. So when I interview somebody, I come at them with a pen and paper and I start rattling off questions to help me understand a day in their life doing their job. Okay, so say I'm actually meeting up with a concrete truck driver and operator. Here are the types of questions I may hit them with. What happens if the concrete truck breaks down or loses power? How long until that concrete starts to solidify? Has that happened before? How much is a truckload of concrete worth? What does a driver get paid? Are they on salary or hourly? What type of education is involved in being able to drive and operate this truck? Is it a promising career or a dead-end job? Is it a physical job or is it fairly easy? What slang is used in the concrete truck world? Have you ever poured in the wrong spot? What happens if the concrete is a bad batch? Who makes the batches? Are they even called batches? What happens if you pour and it suddenly rains? What other workers do you interact with on the job site? How do other workers on the construction job site view concrete truck drivers and operators? Am I even using the right term when I say concrete truck drivers and operators? Are they just operators? Are they truck drivers? What's the position title? Do they have a high turnover or do they have a good attrition rate? What are the most common complaints about their job? Do they get a discount on concrete? Do they have autonomy or are they micromanaged? What kind of hours do they have? Do they get benefits? Are they good benefits? Do they want their kids to follow in their trade? Would they want to start their own concrete truck driving business? Is it a profitable business model or no? Guys, I could go on all day, but I won't. Actually, now that I think about it, uh, in a future episode, I will try to have somebody on that has a specific craft or job, and I'll go about interviewing them as I would anybody to learn more so that I could incorporate that knowledge and experience into my own writing. And I'll show you how I do it. And maybe we can all learn something new. Kind of wish I thought about that sooner, but what are you going to do? I'll also add that if you are writing a book or a story of some kind, that you should definitely reference your sources and consider giving anyone you interview an acknowledgement in the back of your book or in your story. So that's kind of a basic overview of how I go about research and an interview. Put yourself as deep as you can into this person's world. Read books, watch videos, interview experts, and try to shadow someone in the field. Honestly, maybe it's just me being a smooth talker, but I have found that companies and businesses and workers have not only let me shadow them, but they've been quite open and excited about the opportunity. It's pretty extraordinary, really. Imagine how pumped a concrete truck driver and operator would be if they were reading a story and the main character flawlessly described the life of a concrete truck driver and operator. You'd win that reader over forever, I imagine. They'd tell all their friends, and hey, you'd sell more books. And that's kind of the point, isn't it? So the message I'll leave you with is write what you know. And if you don't know something, put the time and the research in so that the reader can be convinced that you are an expert all along. Okay, guys, I would be eternally grateful if you subscribed or followed my little podcast and YouTube channel. And consider buying my books. Links in the description. Okay, that's all she wrote. Later, guys. This has taken me forever to record. There's a dog outside and it just keeps barking. And then there were some planes, really low flying planes earlier, and it's just everything is working against me today. And my microphone is so sensitive and it picks all that stuff up. So when you're recording and you don't have a soundproof room, you're super aware of all the sounds that happen in the house, outside. You know, it's just, it's very detrimental. That's just some of the behind the scenes of me struggling with the noises.